If you Google money saving tips for booking flights, you'd get a lot of hits regarding this topic. While there are a lot of tips and tricks out there, different methodologies on getting the best deal, you need to keep in mind that these things are changing constantly with new sites, apps, trends, the situation of the economy, and so forth. The point I want to make is the tips I'm about to share with you are things that you can do to get the best deal possible, which has worked for me over the past years. Next to accommodation and transportation, flights are your top expenses as a traveler. In this video, I'll be sharing with you ways to save money when booking flights. If you'd like to save money, which I'm sure you do, continue watching this video, but before I start, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to see more travel tips just like these. Generally speaking, booking flights in advance is much better than last minute most of the time. I say most of the time because there are last minute or blackout deals, which I will get into a bit later. If you already know where you'd like to go, it's better to book it ahead, at least 21 days before your departure date, but I suggest doing it 3 to 4 months out. Prior to your trip, start watching for price trends and fluctuations. Write it down on a notepad if necessary, if it will help you track it better. If you have no choice and have to fly out last minute, check out Hotwire for blackout deals. But of course, whenever possible, book at least 21 days ahead. Prices for flights fluctuate throughout the whole week. Think about this for a second. When are people usually off work? When do people have the free time to sit down to look up flights online? When do people have time away from obligations, from dropping the kids off at soccer practice, dinner plans, working, or what have you? Unless you're in a cubicle on a Wednesday afternoon looking at flights instead of working, that's a whole nother story. But for the majority, people look at flights when they're free, which are typically on the weekends. Airline companies know this, and it's why prices fluctuate when you book your flight. Alright, here's what happens. Airlines will put out their prices at the beginning of the week. Other airline companies will then drop their prices to stay competitive the next following day. So ideally, a Tuesday or a Wednesday are the best days to book your flights. When the weekend comes around, the airline companies know that this is when a lot of people are off and when many have the free time to book their flights. The incentive for airlines pricing competitively lessens since people will book regardless around this time, so prices tend to go up. As I mentioned, people have free time on weekends, so it's when they look to book their flights. Just like the previous tip, the same concept applies to this one. People also plan their trip around work or obligations. Many will depart over the weekend or on a Friday after work. Airline companies know this, so prices are typically more expensive during the weekend. Sometimes it's also cheap flying out on Sundays, but midweek is ideally when you'd like to fly out. Now that you know when to look for and book flights, you need to know which platforms to look for it. You want to look up your flights in different search engines just to compare and get an idea of how much your flights are. Around 2 to 3 sites are more than enough when you're doing your research. Some of the sites I use are Skyscanner, Kayak, Cheap Flights, Google Flights, and Hopper. Compare your flight prices in any of these platforms and watch out for things such as baggage fees, length of the flight, and so forth. Whenever possible, avoid booking popular dates such as events and standard holidays. It is more than likely that many will be traveling around this time, and the airlines know this, so that means prices will be higher than normal. Also, if you're flying into a particular country, check to see if there's any upcoming holidays or events unique to the country or region. I bet you'd see a massive price drop in flights and after it's done, so that's something to consider. If you are visiting a country for a specific holiday though, then my suggestion is to book it way in advance. Being flexible has its perks. This means being open to your departure dates as well as your return dates. Try different combinations from 7, 8, or 10 days if you're originally planning on traveling for just a week. I'm not asking you to completely change your travel plans, but having some sort of flexibility between 1 to 2 days on your departure or return dates will give you an idea of which combination is more feasible for you. Also, look at different airports. If a country you're flying into has multiple airports, not only does it have to make sense financially, it also has to work with your travel plans. You just don't want to land at an airport if it requires you to take an expensive transportation to wherever you're going once you land. I know that this video is about getting the best deals for flights, but beware of cheap flights. There are times when these flights have long layovers or even overnight layovers. Trust me, I've done this way too many times back when I started. This may not be the best deal in the long run, so you need to see if it's worth it because you need to tack on accommodation for the evening if your layover is overnight, your meal, as well as transportation costs if needed. Most importantly, your time. Sometimes it's just not worth it to go for the cheaper bargain, so you always need to evaluate if this budget option makes sense for you. Sometimes it's just better to spend a couple of $100s up front for the flight to save you more money as well as time. On tip number 4, I mentioned that you need to look up flights on a couple of search engines. I hope you noticed that I never mentioned anything about buying your tickets on these sites, although you may, and sometimes it is a great option to do so. So the point I'm trying to make is I ask you to simply just do your research research on them to use it as cross-reference points to see trends and price fluctuations. Once you find a flight that works for you, go to the airline's website and look for the exact flight and see if the price matches your original search as well as if it makes sense for you. Most of the time, it will match more or less. There are several reasons to buy directly. One is for loyalty programs. Another reason is if you need to change your flights. It's much harder to deal with your situation when there's multiple carriers and a third party is involved. Aside from this, you may have to change these flights individually and pay for them separately, which will end up costing you so much more. And on top of that, it'll be such a hassle. And for the last tip, have patience, but don't be too patient. Using these methods can be tedious, and I get it. You need to spend some time on doing research, so be patient, though over time you will get better and be much faster when researching flights. On the flip side, if you feel that the flight is the best deal you'll get, don't hesitate to pull the trigger and just book it. Do not second guess yourself because chances are your gut is most likely right. Don't wait till the next day or the next week for the prices to get better. If it feels right, just book that ticket. Now that you've watched this video, knowing you took a lot from it, it's time to apply them the next time you book that ticket. I always love hearing from you guys, so comment down below, let me know what you think of these tips. And that's it for this video, and you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to my channel to see more videos like these, and I'll catch you on the next video.